G'day, team. I've got the amazing Dr. John Chan with me today. I'm super excited to dive into this conversation. Welcome aboard, bro.
Hey, how are you?
Lovely to have you here today. So, the reason I'm super excited about this conversation is we're diving into all things burnout and workplace burnout, and essentially what I see on the front line when we're talking about change. People love change, right? Not. And so I'm keen to dive into this conversation. So before we get into it, do you just want to quickly introduce yourself, who you are, your background, and let's dive into it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. So my name's John Chan. I'm the managing director for Infinite Potential. We're an independent think tank that does a lot of rigorous research and evaluation into workplace matters. We have a really strong focus on helping organizations and leaders create what we're calling a sustainable workplace. And we define that as a workplace that is sustainable for both the organization and for the people in it. We know from what's been going on in the past few years, there's a lot of kind of added kind of pressures, and just the way that our relationship with work has really changed, and kind of moving into that future of work. There is a lot of questions out there about like how are we going to kind of get to a place where it benefits everyone. And I think this is the place where we are doing a lot of research and helping organizations really understand how to kind of move into that future.
You've already touched on a few key points. We're going to dive into. Like, we've had a massive shift and change in the last 5 years, right? We had COVID hit. We then everyone got forced to work from home. Then it's like we've got to adopt this whole new remote working environment using all these new technologies that we've never used before. Then now it's migrated to everything artificial intelligence and how does that interact in our daily lives. And now what I'm hearing is the shift back to what we call normality, which is like back to pre-COVID, is like now all the organizations are now forcing all their staff to go back to a 5-day work week. And so this has been a lot's happened in a very short period of time. Let's start there. I'm keen to get your input into this from a clinical organizational psychologist. That must screw up people's minds. What are you seeing on the front line?
Yeah, it really is. Through like you mentioned, like during COVID, we were forced into this new way of working, and I think a lot of people got a taste of what it could actually be like. We had all of these industries that were like, oh, we could never work from home, and we could never do something like that. That was forced into it, and the result was that hey, we not only were we able to do it, we had similar, if not higher levels of productivity while we were doing this. And that really blew a lot of people's minds, and also it really shaped the sort of our relationship with work, because we got that taste of, oh, what does it feel like when we can actually balance work with some of my home and personal life as well. And so that was all going on. Then we come to, I guess, more recent times where because of a variety of reasons, like slowing productivity and all of these new changes in technology, some leaders are saying, "Oh, how am I going to? What am I going to do to kind of change my level of productivity? How do I increase that?" And so I know what used to work. So why don't we just make everybody go back to what it used to be and kind of force everybody back? And I think that it's not going to work, because I think a lot of workers have gotten that taste of, oh, this is like we did this and we have shown that it's worked. And so now you're forcing us back to a model that we knew wasn't working then. So now there's a lot of conflict. And I think this is the spot that we're really trying to help find answers for. Like, what is that balance, and how do we get people to trust? How do we get organizations to trust people, and also how do we get people to kind of trust organizations as well?
That's a super interesting point. I haven't thought about that. We were looking at moving into a new office recently because we're growing our team, running out of space, and doing a study across the Brisbane ecosystem. This is like kind of unheard of, but it's back to what it was pre-COVID times, where less than 8% of all offices are now vacant. So only 8% of vacancy. It's like skyrocketed back to what it was beforehand. Like, a couple of years ago, you could pick and choose what building you want to be in. All the pricing had dropped dramatically, and now it's completely opposite again. What I just heard you just say there, John, was essentially that's happening because companies are wanting better performance, better productivity from their team, and they're just putting the fact that, well, that we used to be really productive 5 years ago in the office, so why don't we just go back to that? Is that what you're saying, essentially?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I call it lazy management. Instead of thinking about how do we integrate all of these great technologies, new processes, so that we can all improve our productivity, let's just go back to what we used to. And the manager needs to see that person in the office. And I know this isn't what today's about, but there's a bigger topic out there about trust. Like that
mind blown.
Between employers and employees. Like nobody trusts anybody anymore, and I think that's another reason for this drive to bring everybody back.
Is it going to work? I have to ask the question.
So a lot of organizations, especially leaders, love saying we're very data driven. We love data. Well, there is really no data that shows that coming back into the office will improve productivity. But there is a lot of research and data that says it will have the opposite effect in not only not having an effect on productivity, but you're going to lose some of your best people. Because people, especially those good people who can go somewhere else, they are going to be attracted to organizations that will provide that level of flexibility.
I don't know if you know this information, so don't quote if you don't know, but like I see a massive trend in the tech sector, right? Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Apple, all the big tech giants, they're all forcing all their staff to come back to a 5-day work week or 4-day work week and be in physical office, physical locations again. I'm assuming because it's probably most likely it's a leasing conversation than it is anything else. But because it's being driven from the top down, from these big corporates, is that why everyone else is thinking they're adopting it, or is there something else happening that I'm not seeing?
It's a really interesting one. Like Amazon is probably the biggest one that has come out and said everybody needs to come back 5 days a week. Actually, quite recently, Microsoft has come out and said, we won't do that. We will keep our flexibility as long as productivity level stays the same or it doesn't drop. And like they're all trying out different things, and there's quite a few underlying reasons too. I think one of the reasons we've been finding it out was that people are forcing people back to work as a way of instead of letting people go, this is a way of kind of almost forcing people to go. So like it's quite complicated. It's not as simple as, oh, we're going to make everybody come back. Like there's other underlying reasons that we've been finding. But at the end of the day, yes, it is, it's just, again, lazy management on trying to get back to, we need to do something about improving our productivity. Let's do this. Rather than really looking at a lot of the research out there on what we can do.
And it sounds like Microsoft's doing it without doing it. So their little get out of jail free card is if our productivity doesn't decline, then you can stay at a 3-day work week. But as soon as it starts declining by 2%, then essentially you got to come back to the office. That's hilarious. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's dive into your diagnostic tool. This is what we're here for today. We kind of got a bit of a tangent, but that's also it's good to learn new information of what you're seeing out there in the environment. So let's dive into your diagnostic tool. You're helping organizations globally around, how do we, I use the word prevent, but you're probably not looking at preventing, but how do we help organizations get through this turmoil of what we're seeing? How do we find out that our organization can be more productive? So talk to me how you came up with this diagnostic tool in the first place, the research you've done in this space, and then what does this mean for organizations?
Yeah, thanks for that. We actually, you're exactly right. This is actually a preventative measure. Too often when we look at kind of organizational problems, organizations kind of wait until it is a proper big problem, and it's like, oh, we need to go in and fix that, rather than doing all the preventative stuff. And so, we have been doing research on burnout for quite a while now, and I think everybody who's listening has probably seen a lot more have noticed a lot more media coverage when it comes to burnout in the last couple of years. And that's been really positive in that that's really brought attention to the topic. But at the same time, that's also made it so that people have been using it interchangeably with anything kind of stress related. Right? I think we were out one night. I overheard somebody say there's kind of burnt out on a Chardonnay. Like no, that's not proper
You're
use
hungover.
term. And so and so a lot of questions, you see a lot of surveys out there that will ask, do you feel burned out in a staff survey? And when we ask that, 9 out of 10 times people will have very different definitions of what that means. And I think that's some of the problems that we really wanted to address. That it's not just something nebulous out there, and you know it when you feel it, but actually there's a very specific definition on what burnout is, and also the dimensions that sort of drives burnout within an organization. So kind of taking a step back, in 2019, the World Health Organization defined burnout as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So that definition has been really helpful in kind of providing some clarity and consistency in what that means. So what basically it's saying burnout is caused by organizational structures and cultures, and also that that last part there has not been successfully managed. It's a management problem. Now I think so often when we think about burnout, we immediately go to the individuals, like, oh, how can we fix that person so that they're not burning out? Like, what can we do for that person so that they don't burn out? And really common things is like, look, if you came to me and say, oh, I'm really experiencing burnout. If I was your manager, I might say, hey, why don't you take Friday off and come back? What that does is really it puts the focus and the onus on the individual. Like, go figure it out. Right? Your fault for burning out. Go figure it out and come back new. But what the root causes of burnout really is within those organizational structures. So I think all of us have experienced like really high level of stress. Then we go on holiday, and we feel fantastic, and we come back, but we come back to that same really high stress environment, and within a week, that holiday seems like pretty long gone. And that's where we need to be fixing, not about these individuals, but what is it that is burning out these individuals? And so, if there's one major takeaway from for the listeners today, I really hope is that burnout is the result of chronic workplace stress, and it's not the fault of the individual. So it's not anything that a person is doing or not doing that's causing the burnout. It's sort of the situation and the work environment that they're in that is causing that. And so for all of the SME leaders and owners out there, if this is a major concern for you and this is what you're seeing, that's where you really need to focus. Spend time on understanding what is burning them, these individuals out, rather than thinking about who is burning out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Where my mind goes and what I see in organizations daily is, and this might be just a personal opinion of what I see, is the person in the organization, and this is at any level from senior management down to the groundwork, is the ones that are burning out. I think I have a correlation to the ones that say yes. They don't know how to say no, is what I'm trying to say. As in they just take on more and more work. And so then what you said before is like, it's the individual's problem, not the organization's problem, is what the current society tells us, where it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
But I go, well, why are they saying yes to everything? There's obviously something driving that particular person to say yes to take on more workload when they know they can't handle it. They know they've got to work, 12, 14, 15 hours a day to try and get through that workload.
Yeah.
Is that like, am I just the one seeing this, or is that what you're also seeing on the ground?
No, that's exactly right. We see, like, that's a really good example that I hear often. It's like those who have that people pleasing personality, or they are just really type A and just want to do everything that's asked of them, or that perfectionist personality. Maybe they're much more likely to burn out because of who they are. And we have done research into this. And at the end of the day, those in sort of the regression model that we do to kind of predict, burnout, they do add a little bit to the predictability, but at the end of the day, it's still the structures within the organization. So, for example, in your example, for the person to keep saying yes, there is something within the organization that's making them say yes. So, for example, if the person's promotion or maybe like bonuses is based on how much they do, that is something that's going to cause that. Versus an organization that says actually it's not based on how much you do, but the impact of the work that you do. That would change that mindset. And also, somebody's giving them that work. So whether it's their manager, it's their colleagues, other people within the organization, they're giving them that work. And organizations that have quite strong kind of boundaries into who gives who work and who kind of accepts work, those are, having those kind of strict processes, those are the things that we're talking about. And we can mitigate, even when somebody says yes a lot or wants to say yes, we can mitigate that by how we design jobs, how we design processes.
So what I'm hearing is a solution here, because when I think about this, and in organizations we work with, it's like, you just got to work harder, got to work. We always talk about work smarter, not harder, right? But I've never seen it actually happen. People implement technology, and they remove processes, and then they take on more work. And so there's always this like, we're on this spinning wheel of death with a mouse. But it's like, we want to start saying no. We want to start being more productive. We want to start working more effectively and working smarter. Where do you start? So what does this diagnostic process look like? This is brand new to me, most likely brand new to a lot of listeners on here. I'm really curious, like, where do you start? What is the process, and what is the outcome for the organization going through this diagnostic?
Yeah, this is a really new way of looking at work. So this is based on our research that we've been doing for the last 5 plus years. And, we know there's a lot of sort of engagement survey, culture surveys. There's just tons of all of these surveys out there. But at the end of the day, those are all still kind of based on either research or kind of thinking from the early 90s. And a lot of those surveys are really focused on the organization and, how do we get people to do more for the organization? What we really wanted to do was create a diagnostic, kind of really balances out what's good for the organization as well as what's good for the individual. So this diagnostic really kind of evolves that way of thinking, so that within the results of diagnostic, you can really kind of pinpoint, okay, so these are the areas to really look at to create what we call a sustainable kind of workplace. So within the framework within the diagnostic, there are 5 key elements that we look at. The first one is protection from harm. So this is looking at those physical and psychosocial risks and hazards. This is probably the most important thing any organization or any leader needs to be thinking about. That when individuals and your employees should leave work no worse off than they are when they first come in. And that's the absolute kind of basic kind of tenement for you to, your responsibility for your people. And as I think a lot of you listeners will know, there's a lot of new legislation, or they're not new, they're just being enforced, legislation from work health and safety on psychosocial risks and hazards. And so we've really integrated all of that so that this is the first step you can take to understanding what that is within your organization. The second piece is what we call human leadership. Like we mentioned in the beginning, like work has really changed, and the expectations from the workforce has really changed about what they expect from leaders. Like, probably not even 5 years ago, you would never think about talking about well-being to your manager, right? But now that's a really kind of common conversation with the new workforce and also the work environment. And also, one thing that we found out during COVID was that those traditional ways of what we kind of call, these are leadership traits, those people who are quite kind of directive, extroverted, kind of that top-down kind of ways of leading, they did pretty terrible during COVID, when the situation was completely unknown. it just did not work. There's new ways that we are expecting leaders to behave, and also we know there are certain ways that leaders or certain types of leaders are much more effective in this new kind of workforce. And so that's another thing that we look into. The third one, this is probably the part that's it's one of the most important parts, what we call people-centered structures. And especially for within sort of that SME population, this is looking at a job design, job processes, rewards structures, all of the kind of mechanical parts of work that I think a lot of times when we're quite busy, or as kind of organizations grow from very small organization to medium size, you kind of overlook. You just make do, and things just kind of happen. And how often is it when somebody kind of first starts a job, they do this amount of things, and every month something new kind of get added to that person until they eventually can't handle it anymore. This really focuses and kind of asks, does the diagnostic on, hey, is this job still reasonable, or the job demands reasonable for one person to be doing? So really important to kind of look at that, because that is, based on all our research, like that is the key source of a lot of the stress that's leading to burnout. The fourth piece there is about what we call team connection. So we know the importance of having a really strong team within as a mitigator for burnout, stress, all of that stuff. If you know that you've got a couple of people or you've got your team that looks after you, that supports each other, that will back you or cover you when you need, even if like everything else is sort of on fire, those teams are quite resilient because of that support that they give each other. You'll see examples of that in, let's say, the military or other areas where they really focus on how important that team dynamics is. And so we look a bit into that. And finally, the last piece is what we call personal growth. This is a really interesting piece in that no matter the situation, right? Like we talked to a lot of people who are really burned out. One thing they kept talking about is like, I really wish I was still growing, like professionally and personally throughout this. It's not simply, oh, let's take everything off of this person's plate. If they're experiencing burnout, that actually happens sometimes and actually exacerbates it, because they take off some of the things that they really enjoy because they're learning and it's new things for them. And what we often hear is when people say, oh, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, I'm not learning anything. That is one of the biggest kind of warning signs that there's a seed being planted that's going to cause all of these other issues in there when people are feeling they're doing the same thing. So the diagnostic kind of really goes into detail about each of those 5 elements to kind of help leaders understand, maybe here's some gaps that we can work on. Maybe there's a couple of areas that we're actually doing really well on, like let's leverage that. I know right now, there's always a problem in attracting and retaining good employees. And what this is trying to do is just provide leaders with those insights on what can we do to attract, retain, and kind of understand our organization a bit better.
Love it, man. I had so many good points there. This conversation can go on for hours. I'm going to pick on a few if you don't mind, and then we can dive into it. So what I heard earlier was around, like, it's a very open conversation these days, right? Maybe this is a COVID thing, maybe not. I always relate this conversation to, or this openness conversation to, like, the Philippines, but essentially employees, staff are now talking with each other about mental health. Mental health is very much a topical conversation now, especially since COVID, where everyone's trying to promote the conversation around mental health more frequently and to understand or try to help people diagnose mental health before it becomes an issue, and hopefully, prevent suicide. That's happening on the ground level, but I think what I heard from before is, let's get the organizational, start talking from an organizational perspective, so that it's like all the way from top all the way down through, because the more we can get employees or staff talking about this openly, then that can also try to prevent some of this burnout from happening.
Yeah, just one thing that we have been really that we looked at in this year's study was actually the link with burnout with other sort of mental health issues out there. What we found was that those who are experiencing burnout are two times more likely to also experience loneliness, and that I mean,
That's
that makes
interesting.
sense, right? Like if
No.
you're so exhausted from work, that's going to take time away from family, friends, anything, any hobbies that you might be doing, all of those things that might isolate you. And tons of research on the detrimental effects on burnout. But what might be important for you as for your listeners as leaders is like this isn't just a nice thing to do, but what we see is that those who are experiencing loneliness, they're 26% less engaged than those who aren't experiencing loneliness. They are 62% less productive than those who are experiencing loneliness, and also 66% of them said that they are not producing as high quality of work as they used to be as well. So there's a real if we're looking at how do we improve productivity and at the same time improve sort of well-being of our people, this is all the same conversation. I think too many times we're like, a lot of leaders think, oh, we got productivity stuff to deal with first. And if that's fine, maybe we'll come back to the well-being stuff. But I'm here to tell you, it's all the same conversation. If you want to improve
Interesting.
productivity, improve the well-being of your people. That's the easiest way to improve productivity. You know, to go spend money on all this technology stuff or all of this stuff. This is the easiest thing. It's kind of low-hanging fruit for you to use, for you to do.
So forcing people back into a 5-day work week in the office is not going to solve this problem.
Really not. No.
The other point I want to dig into is around, I guess, what relates to our world, right? Like when we dive into AI automation, one of our key focuses working with clients is around removing mundane tasks that they actually don't like doing anyway, so they can focus on what they love doing. And I never related this to their well-being. It was always just like, well, what's your passion? What do you love doing? And let's do more of that. I hadn't really related to your conversation just now. And well, actually, that will reduce burnout because they're doing what they love doing, which then there's this roll-on effect to everything you just mentioned, which is super interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And it's never a either or. It's an and. When those organizations, those leaders who are trying to implement they're trying to implement AI to replace their people, rather than to implement them to provide a tool so that their people don't have to do the mundane stuff. There's a huge difference in that. And again, that's if leaders aren't clear about the intention of some of these things that they're trying to do, it's not going to be effective because again, back to that beginning, talk about this erosion of trust between employers and employees. I think that's a really important thing that doesn't get talked about enough.
Sounds like it's a sweep under the carpet type of conversation.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not working with any of those leaders that just want to implement AI to replace their staff members. Yeah, this is awesome, man. I really love this. So what's the outcome for doing this diagnostic tool? What's the business going to see? Is it like a silver bullet? Is there is there an ROI? I think how business owners think, right?
Yeah,
What's the do you have any statistics on this, or is this something you're still working on from a research perspective?
Well, it's quite unique to each organization in terms of like what happens next. What we know is that nobody knows what the silver bullet is or what's the right way to work, right? And that's where we are right now. And by doing these diagnostic, you can understand how your organization is going, and then that's when you start the conversation about what can we change, what can we do to improve both the productivity and well-being of our people. I wish I could come here and tell you, yep, there's these 3 steps that you can follow and you'll be fantastic. But we don't. But that's just not true. There is no right answer for that. And not only
yes, anyway, as you do more and more of these over the coming 5-10 years, and they'll become more clear, right? Because we'll have statistics on this, because this really hasn't been talked about enough or done enough yet, right? This is like we're still in the infancy of this of going down this rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And like you mentioned earlier, also like with the integration of all these new tech, what does it actually look like for work? And so this is where it's there's a lot of unknowns right now. There's more unknowns than there are knowns. But what we do know is organizations who are going down this road of finding out what's best for them, that's going to be that competitive advantage that no one else can copy. Right? This is going. It's a very unique thing that if they figure out how to work best for them, that is something that others can't copy.
Love that. Yep. Do you want to be faster and better than your competitor? Then that's what we talk about with the AI automation. It's the same conversation with this, this burnout diagnostic tool, right? As I see it working in really good synergy. If you want to implement and keep moving forward and be better than your competitor, then you should start internally, look at your people, look at your burnout internal. And I think you hit some really good points on this discussion, which is around get your staff to do what they love doing and be more passionate about what they love doing, and it's going to affect them in all frames of life. This is awesome, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing the data on this. Actually, I don't know what data you can pull from this over the coming years, but I think it's going to be really cool to see the impact. And you're right, we're such an unknown. Technology's been around for what 10, 20, 30 years in organizations as a normality, but this is the whole new era. Like this is like we're technology is moving so fast. We have no idea what the impact's going to be on our mental health and also on the workplace as a whole.
One thing, the reason why we call it like workplace sustainability, I think people probably have been using the word like thriving. You're going to do fantastic. It'd be amazing. All of those kind of words to describe the workplace. But we really have what we've seen is people see that as just more work for them. Like if you want me to do more and be more engaged in the organization, that just means you want me to do more without paying me, or that's all that means. And there's a really big pushback against that. It's like you'll fire me at any time, but you want me to go above and beyond. And so what we are really trying to set is let's reset the baseline on what we need for the organization to keep running and be productive and profitable. Number one thing, we definitely need that, but also we can do it at the same time supporting the well-being of all of the people and taking care of our people as well. And if we can get to that point and we kind of rebuild that between the employee saying, hey, I trust you to do this stuff, and then you trust me to do this stuff, and we're good, then we can really get to that kind of thriving and doing really amazing stuff together. But I think people are trying to jump to that part without creating a really solid foundation. And that's what we're trying to do here. Reset the foundation on, let's get some of these basics right first before we do all of this, before we try to think about doing these other things.
It's really finding that balance. We always talk about having work-life balance. This is the same conversation, right? Like, what is that balance between a profitable company, a sustainable company, and sustainable staff members that are going to burn out? And what is that balance between the two? Absolutely love it. Thank you, man. I really do appreciate you jumping on here. I think this is a topic that needs to be talked about enough, more than what it currently is. We talk about mental health a fair bit these days. It's still not talked about enough. I think this is that next level, right? Can we discuss this internally on a daily in our organization and bring the leaders and the entire business on this journey? So thank you very much. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, from all the SME to mid-market organizations we deal with. Like, the research you do in this space is absolutely crucial for all of our organizations. So yeah, thank you very much, man. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And to shout out to anyone listening in, highly recommend you jump on a session with John. This is his entire world, and he can do this diagnostic for your organization and give you really good insights into how you can be better than your competitor. Yeah, you heard it first, directly from John. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks.